Welcome back. I hope that you are doing well and that you're having a good day, night, afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you happen to be. Today I'd like to talk about another one of my trips. This time I'd like to talk about a trip I took about a year ago to Bogotá. So I have some friends that live in Bogotá, and I'd always wanted to visit Colombia because I also have some family that lives there. Although my family does not live in Bogotá, I have family that lives in a different city in Colombia, and I did visit other cities while I was there, and I'll probably talk about those in another video, but today I wanted to talk about Bogotá. As I said, I have some friends who live there, so it ended up being a really nice trip because I was able to see those friends and we were able to hang out together, and they were able to show me some really cool things in the city. It's a very, very beautiful city. For those of you who have not been there before, I can tell you I highly recommend it. It's a great city. And those of you who have been there or perhaps live there, you already know what I'm talking about. I will say a lot of people, I think, at least a lot of people in North America, think of Colombia as being very warm because of its location close to the equator or on the equator. But Bogotá is actually pretty cold, largely due to its elevation. So it's very, very, very high up there in terms of elevation. So it can be pretty chilly. And it can be very cloudy as well. But nonetheless, it's very beautiful. Definitely a capital city in that there's a sort of downtown, sort of government-y, sort of financial district-y kind of vibe to various parts of the city. But I think that's actually kind of cool. And that's certainly not all of the city. The city is filled with amazing food, amazing coffee, amazing people, some great clubs, really beautiful parks, great shopping areas, both inside and outside, markets, some really beautiful architecture, and the nature is fantastic. In fact, I'm going to spend part of today's video talking about the nature and my experience with the nature there, amongst other things. Really, really cool museums as well. I only was able to go to a couple of them because I was only there for a few days. I was in Colombia for a little while, but I was only in Bogotá for a few days. But the museums I did go to were very nice. So I suppose I'll kind of tell the story in terms of highlights or events. I guess I'll do it somewhat chronologically, and maybe I'll pick like 3 or so things that I want to talk about. So first of all, on the map here, for those of you maybe unfamiliar with the territory, here is a map of South America. This is a political map, so it shows the countries and the borders of those countries. So Colombia is right here. So we've got part of Mexico and Belize, also places I've been to that I'd be happy to talk about at some point in the future. Then we have the rest of the Central American countries over here, going all the way down to, it all sort of comes down into Colombia. And Colombia, of course, is abutted on either side by Ecuador on one side and Venezuela on the other side. And Bogotá is kind of right in the middle there. You can't really see the elevation from this, or you can't see the elevation from this map at all because it's a political map. It doesn't have the topography. Over here you can kind of see it, but even then it's not super great. Let's see over here. Oh, here we go. This is a little bit better. Yes, okay. So here we can see we've got the Andes Mountains. So the Andes Mountains are very kind of dramatic mountains, kind of crushingly beautiful and very tall. Is there another, even more of a close-up? Let's see. Okay, here's a map of the city of Bogotá. I actually think I need to get some better maps. I love maps, and I have some really nice maps of some places. And for a while I was trying to keep track of the places that I had visited by buying really nice kind of like frameable maps of certain locations that I visited. But at some point I kind of fell off of that. I think I was just running out of space, to be honest. And I think it's one of those situations too, when I'm traveling, I'm always like, oh, I'll just order a map when I get home from this place. That way I don't have to deal with carrying it on the airplane and it getting damaged and blah, blah, blah. And then I think I just end up not doing it. So I need to be better about that. So I have a map here of the city, which isn't really easy to see, but I'll kind of walk you through it anyways. And that way, maybe you can just kind of use your imagination. It's probably just the same that way. Unless you have a really, really good sense of map reading, or if it's something you're used to, I think using your imagination to sort of think about the places that I'm talking about is probably better. You can also just look them up as well if you want to see pictures. You know, I've played with the idea of having like pictures overlaid in the video, but that seems a little too like presentation-y to me. Like a little too much like, here's a slideshow kind of a situation. Which to me feels kind of not relaxing, but I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong or if you have a different sense of that. So when I was in Bogotá, I was there in the spring, and I stayed in a neighborhood that was pretty close to the mountain called La Candelaria, and there are a few notable things to my knowledge, in that neighborhood. There's the Gold Museum. There's the Botero Museum. And there's Monserrate. So Monserrate is... I don't even really know how to describe it other than by saying it's just a magnificent mountain. And one of the days we were there, we climbed to the top of it. And this is something that you can do, and it's something that people do. It seemed somewhat regularly. It was funny, about halfway up the mountain, I want to say it was about maybe an hour and a half walk up the mountain. And it's a combination of stairs and slopes, but it's all like paved, basically. And about halfway up, I was really feeling it. And I'm not in horrible shape. I'm actually in, I'd say, pretty so-so shape, like on the better side of so-so maybe. And I was definitely feeling winded about halfway through. Some of that was due to the elevation. The elevation was about 10,000 feet, I believe. And where I live, it's sea level. And most of the places I've lived, actually all of the places I've lived, have been basically at sea level. So anytime extreme elevation is involved, usually at some point I start to feel it in some way. Not in the kind of extreme way that I know some people do. I don't tend to get sick or anything like that from elevation, at least not yet. But when we were walking up Monserrate in Bogotá, I definitely felt kind of extra sweaty, extra winded. My muscles felt a little extra tired. And it was funny because there were people who were locals who were having no problem with the hike. And some of them, especially some older people, people who seemed about retirement age, maybe 60s, 70s, some of them were jogging and some of them were just walking and didn't seem to really be having much difficulty. And here I am, I mean, I'm not as young as I used to be, but I'm also not in my 70s. So it was kind of funny to be passed up by these people in their 70s who were obviously very strong and very used to the elevation and very used to that kind of exercise. And it was cool. It was really cool. It was humbling, kind of in the coolest possible way. So it was very beautiful. The day was kind of cloudy when we set out. My friends who lived there wanted to come with us. So I should say it was me and 3 friends who were visiting. So 3 friends and I. And then there were 3 friends who lived there who were joining us on that hike. So it was 7 of us. And it was really something. It was amazing. Part of the way up, or at various points kind of on the way up, there were vendors who were selling like refreshments, fruits, and things to drink. And that was nice. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny describing a hike. How do you describe a hike? You basically walk in a kind of upward direction, right? For a while. So it was challenging, but it's a really fantastic city to see from a high elevation point. The combination of like the brickwork and the way the buildings are constructed in Bogotá, and really in a lot of South America, I think, along with just something about observing a city and a city's sprawl from above is kind of fascinating. And there were various really beautiful kind of lookout points along the way up. And then when we finally got to the top, of course, there's a church up there and there's a cafe. So we had some snacks and some coffee and some tea. And we hung out at the top for a while and enjoyed the fresh, albeit rather thin air, and just sort of, I don't know, enjoyed the experience of being up there. Probably stayed up there for, 45 minutes or an hour. And then there's like a sky tram situation. Like, what do we call that? Like a gondola, like an air gondola or something, sky tram or air gondola. I'm not really sure what the best name for it is, but it's essentially, one of these. It's almost like a train car, like a subway train car, like half the size of maybe like a standard size subway train car, but with windows on all sides and I think above as well. And it's just suspended by these cables, and you can go, it just takes you all the way down the mountain. You can also take it up, but we decided that we would walk to the top and then take the gondola back down. And obviously the view was amazing there as well. Kind of extremely satisfying to see what you walked up. And yeah, it was amazing way to spend the morning. It was a few hours in total, and it was great. So one of the other things that we did while we were there is, actually I think it was that same day, but much later that day or that night, we went to a club. So we went, after Monserrate, we went to a park and an open air market, and then we went to a coffee place. We sat and had some coffee and some food, and then we went to dinner. And when we were at dinner, a couple of my friends suggested we go to Teatron, which is apparently the biggest, if not one of the biggest clubs in, like, nightclubs in South America. So, with that description, I was very intrigued and definitely wanted to go. Also at that point, I think I had a lot of coffee kind of coursing through my body. So I was ready to party. And it was incredible, to say the least. So if any of you watching have ever been to Teatron, you already know what I'm talking about. You probably know better than I do. I was only there for a few hours one night, but it's the kind of place where when you're waiting to get in, you get this kind of creeping sensation coming over you that what you're about to experience is going to be really awesome, because just the process of getting in is such a thing. So we went in and we walked in through like the entrance, and we go downstairs, and it's one of those situations kind of like the entrance to a sports arena or a festival, where there's like the little barricades that have you kind of zigzag, like the zigzag line situation, and then somebody checks your ID and they do the shakedown, they pat you down and the whole bit. And then there's like another version of that. There were various versions of that, various stages of that, and they were ready for it. They were obviously clearly prepared to have a ton of people there. It's one of those things where as you're waiting to get in, you kind of look around and see how significant the infrastructure of the situation is, or of the club is, and you're like, oh wow, this is a thing. Like, this is something, like, they do this every night. They're expecting a lot of people. There's already a lot of people here. This is a lot. This is probably going to be awesome. And it was. So for those of you who don't know about this place, it has, so it's a club, like, a nightclub, a dance club. But it has different rooms or different areas that are basically different themes. So from what I could tell, it took up what looked like a whole city block. In the building, underneath the building, outside of the building, there were various outdoor levels. So one level that seemed like it was the roof, but then I remember going up another level or two, and that was also the roof. So as I'm saying this, I'm remembering that I meant to look up more pictures of this place, but basically every room has different music and different DJ and different light show or no light show or whatever. And I'm trying to remember the rooms that we went to. The first one was just kind of like top 40 in a house, kind of like light or like mainstream house and top 40. And that was cool, but honestly, it wasn't that different. That room wasn't that different than a lot of clubs that I have seen or been in the United States or anywhere else. But we continued along, and there are these corridors and the stairs and the whole thing. And I think the second room we went to they were playing salsa music. And then later they were playing bachata in this, I believe, the same room or an adjacent room. So that was fun. We were there for a little while in that room. And at some point, I think it was when we were in that room, one of my friends decided to get a bottle of aguardiente for us. And it's this cool thing where you can just like get the bottle and they give you little plastic shot glasses and you just sort of carry it room to room. It doesn't have the same kind of like, I don't know, like that like over the top, overpriced, ritzy, weird kind of status thing that bottle service in the United States has. At least my experience with bottle service in the United States is it's always overpriced and always kind of like a weird scene, because then you're like at a table that's getting bottle service, which I don't know. I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade or be a hater here or anything like that, but it's just always such a ripoff and kind of, yeah, it's just like kind of a weird look. It seems to me, at least. That's no judgment if that's something that you enjoy doing. But this was a totally different thing. It was very, very chill, very cool. And again, since like sort of this like constant mobility thing is kind of a theme with Teatron, where you're sort of moving, you can move from room to room, vibe to vibe, music, sort of genre to genre. It was really convenient to just have a bottle and take shots every now and again. So a friend got the bottle and we had that. And from that room, I think that was in the room where they were playing the salsa music. And then after that, we ended up going to one of the rooftops, or what seemed like a rooftop or a patio or something. It was outdoors. And the sort of faintest like sprinkle started to occur. It wasn't full on rain. It was just a very, very light sort of sprinkling. It could have just been a cloud passing through just because the elevation is so high. I'm not really sure, but it was pleasant, actually. I have to say, it was very refreshing. And on that patio was more of a sort of minimal techno vibe. There was a DJ, or maybe it was two DJs. But there was a DJ who was spinning, like a minimal techno kind of thing. It wasn't like hard techno, like in the sort of like Berlin kind of style. It was, I don't know, I guess it was the sort of most Berlin vibe thing that I experienced when I was in Colombia, but it was very, very far from that. So yeah, I guess minimal techno is how I would describe it. And that was fun. Mainly the coolest part about that was just being outside for a moment, getting some fresh air. The music was cool. That wasn't like really the vibe that I was, or the mood I was in that night. So we were probably only there for about a half hour, 35 or so minutes before moving on to the next room. The next room, gosh, now I'm having a hard time remembering, to be honest. I think the next room was, the next room I think had it was like a reggaeton house music kind of mashup situation, kind of like very, very up-tempo, kind of housey reggaeton, which was fun, very fun actually. A lot of happy people in that room, it seemed. And then from there, we then went to one of these other like rooftops, and I think this actually was the rooftop proper, kind of, because I don't think there was any place above this. And this was sort of indoor, outdoor. It was outdoor area, but there was also like a bar inside, and I think the DJ was inside also. And that was like mid-2000s rock music, like kind of like alternative rock, mid-2000s alternative rock, largely from the United States. So that was fun. I mean, the sound system was fun, and the people seemed to be enjoying it. That one felt kind of the most out of place to me. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I've heard this before. I remember when this stuff was on the radio. It sounds cool in the sound system, and again, it's nice to get the fresh air. Wasn't my favorite of the rooms, but it was fun. And then from there, we went back down into some of the other ones. I think that's when we went back down into the room that was playing salsa, and at that point, they had started playing bachata. So that was fun. And there were like many, many, many more rooms though, but at that point, we'd been there for several hours. And I think we were about ready to go because I believe the next day was when we were going to be flying out to go to a different city in Colombia. But Teatron was amazing. Tons of fun. I think one of the things I really liked about it was just that it kind of had something for everyone. I always like inclusive spaces, and I really like spaces that, you could go with a big group of people and you don't have to find it doesn't have to be one thing that everybody agrees on. If it's something that has a little bit of everything, I'm not doing a good job of describing this, but basically the idea being that you could go with like a big group of people, and once you're inside, you can kind of split up and go to whatever part you like based on the music or the vibe or the scene or whatever. So that was really fun. I enjoyed that a lot. To be honest, even more than I thought I would. I don't really spend a lot of time partying anymore. I feel like that's for a slightly younger crowd, is kind of in general how I feel, at least here in the United States. But I felt like very firmly in the middle of the sort of age range. I feel like there were people up to about 20 or 30 years older than me at the club, and people about 10 years younger than me at the club. So it felt like a comfortable experience. And everybody was nice, or everybody seemed really nice. The service was great. The other club goers were all really nice. I guess I'm only saying that because sometimes, at least in the United States, sometimes it's really hit or miss with clubs. Sometimes there are people who are like looking for a fight, and sometimes it's just not a good vibe. But there must have been, I don't even know how many, probably, I don't know, definitely thousands of people in this club. Hard to say. And like I said, I didn't even go to all of the rooms. I don't even think I went to half of the rooms, to be honest. So, very extensive club, very cool, tons of fun. So, Monserrate, Teatron. I mentioned some outdoor markets and some other things. one of the other things we did was one of the days or mornings, it was during the day, it was morning or maybe close to lunchtime, we went to the Botero Museum, which was a lot of fun. I don't think I'd ever seen any of Botero's works in person, or if so, it was only a few. But this was great. I mean, the whole museum is just his paintings, and that was fantastic. Really, really cool. If you're not familiar with Botero's works, I would say Google him and check it out. Maybe I'll put, you know what, I should put links to these things in the description. I'm not going to put links to like clubs and restaurants and things like that because, I don't know, something about that feels kind of weird. You can just look those up, but I don't know, putting a link to a museum at least, or maybe a Wikipedia link article to an artist, that feels okay. So that was cool. Something that was kind of funny that ended up happening, I think the last day we were there. So the place we were staying, right next to it was a parking lot. And it was I don't know if it was valet or if you just needed I guess it was like a valet parking lot, but it wasn't valet. No, it wasn't. I can't remember, honestly. It was a parking lot. And it was a parking lot that was not always open, and it was a private parking lot. But then in the parking lot was an espresso machine. So there was like a cafe there during the day. And it was an old looking espresso machine. And I thought it was kind of interesting. I mean, cool business model, right? Like have this like sort of quasi valet private parking area that also has coffee and juice. Well, when we were hanging out with some of our friends, they mentioned that parking lot used to be a cafe, like a proper cafe, not just a cafe kind of in the parking lot. And it was a cafe that Gabriel Garcia Marquez used to go to and used to write at. And so that when they tore down the cafe, apparently they kept the espresso machine because it was just like, it's just like fueled one of the most famous and greatest writers of all time, which I think is fantastic and so cool. I don't know if I've verified that. I guess you can fact check me. I have no reason to assume that my friends were lying to me or didn't know what they were talking about. They're both born and raised in Bogotá and know a lot about the city, so I trusted them. I suppose I should verify that. I feel like in this day and age, especially like with internet culture being what it is, there's always this like really intense need to verify things, and I forget that about that a lot of the time. And when I'm just hanging out with friends who I like know and trust, I just like don't even think to verify that. But like I said, no reason to think that they were lying or misinformed. So I guess that's the story until proven otherwise. What else? This has been very rambly. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you. And if this is too rambly, let me know. I know that some people will like write out a script or an outline for a script. I feel like it's a little bit more natural to just ramble and go with the flow. But if it's too much, you can let me know in the comments and maybe I can sort of rein it in a little bit. So there are other things in Bogotá, but they're more kind of like broadly Colombian things, like the coffee being really good, the fruit being amazing. I mean, pretty much everywhere I've been that's close to the equator or on the equator has amazing fruit, and I love fruit. I mean, I have a sweet tooth, so I like sweet things in general, and fruit obviously is kind of like peak for me, as far like fruit and chocolate are kind of like peak sweet things for me. But what else to say about Bogotá? We did other things. We went to some restaurants. Oh! No, I'll save that for another time. I was thinking about other sort of kind of random things. Maybe at some point I'll do a video that's just like greatest hits dining experiences that I've had when traveling. And this would include all sorts of dining experiences. This is not like purely haute cuisine or like fine dining or whatever. I've been to some of those places, obviously, but some of my favorite dining experiences have been in casual places or whatever, where the food just happens to be amazing. So maybe I'll do that another time. I will say, though, I mentioned the aguardiente earlier. For those of you who, I don't know, like that kind of a thing, that was fun. I don't think I had ever had aguardiente before, or if I did, it was like, the stuff that somebody buys in the airport on the way back when they like forgot to get you a gift or something, or it might have been in like a cocktail or something like that. But I had a few different brands of aguardiente in Colombia, and it was good. Generally, my experience with hard alcohol in other countries outside of the United States is that they tend to be pretty well balanced and, I don't know, not super intense, but just kind of pleasant. I don't really drink that much, but I'm always down for a new gastronomical experience. So I usually try things when I'm in a place where they've got something that's, local or whatever. What else? What else to say about that? Yeah. So Monserrate, open air markets, coffee, teatron, aguardiente, Botero Museum, espresso machine in kind of this random private parking lot where Marquez used to hang out when it was a cafe and drink coffee and write. And yeah, extremely high elevation, at least for me, somebody who's from always lived in a sea level city. I've lived in various cities, but they've all been basically sea level. So the high elevation thing is always kind of a fun treat. And yeah, I think I'm kind of going to wrap it up there. If there's anything that you'd like me to expand on, or in general, if you have comments, suggestions, requests, criticism, if you're like, yo, dude, you ramble way too much, stop it, you can tell me. I might or might not change the way that I am, but it'll be good to know nonetheless. And yeah, I'm going to wrap it up there. I hope that you've enjoyed this, and if you've made it this far, thank you very much. I hope you have a great day, night, afternoon, week, weekend, whatever it may be, wherever you may be. And I will see you next time.